Ardrey confirms with one observation. The United States adopted the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments after the Civil War to extend freedom, citizenship, and voting rights to minorities. This entails that the federal government has adopted a constitutional obligation to ensure that the concerns of members of minority groups are adequately represented within its political system. Because our government has voluntarily accepted this obligation onto itself, clearly and incorporated into its supreme law, the team that wins today's round is whichever best achieves equal representation in the presidential election. Our sole point of contention is leveling the playing field. As Gelman of Vox News reports in 2016, most racial minorities and lower-class citizens live in states with predetermined electoral college outcomes, deterring them from voting. This is why it finds that Latinos hold 28% less voting power than whites, whereas blacks have 16% less power. Problematically, McElvey writes for the Demos organization in 2015 that wealthy white voters who have the highest turnout rate often oppose policies to help the disadvantaged, which only exacerbates the issue of underrepresentation. Guidance at Princeton University reveals in 2014 just how deeply entrenched this problem has become, finding that the economic elite have more political power than over half of Americans. Subsequently, America's democracy has been taken over by the top few percent as voting has been used to create a feedback loop of oppression. As Terry of the University of Oregon finds in 2015, that 77% of the time a policy is passed, it benefits the group with the highest turnout rate. Luckily, a national popular vote mitigates this problem by equalizing policy interactions. Theodore of Bryn College explains in 2011 that making every vote count under a direct national popular vote incentivizes candidates to gather votes in the maximum amount of markets, which is why he finds that affirming would broaden the presidential campaign strategy, boosting turnout in previously ignored communities. The broadening of campaign strategies occurs in two ways. The first is campaign visits. In an effort to mobilize their existing support group, as well as bring political discourse to new voters, politicians will travel to more places under a direct national popular vote, which is why Stromberg of Stockholm University found in 2008 that affirming would cause the equal distribution of campaign visits nationally to increase by 56%. Evenly spending campaign visits matters. Evenly spreading campaign visits matters, as McKee of the University of Texas finds in 2005 that for every 14 candidate visits a locale experiences, turnout increases by 1%. Second is political advertisements. Stromberg additionally found in his analysis that switching to the direct popular vote would cause the equal distribution of political advertisements to increase by 57%. This is important because political advertisements greatly influence voter turnout rates, as Friedman of the University of Virginia reports in 2008 that for every 0.5% increase in political advertisements in an area, voter turnout increases by nearly 2.5%. The warrant comes from Reichert of the University of Sydney, who writes in 2016 that increased political knowledge, which stems from advertisements, causes individuals to feel more educated in politics and prompts them to participate in politics at a greater level. This effect is quantified by Hartman of Stanford University, who found in 2013 that transitioning to a direct national vote would increase total voter turnout by over 2 million people. The impact of equal enfranchisement is a representative government. As Stephen Phillips notes in his book, Brown is the New White, by making low-income people and people of color a potent political force through the popular vote, politicians would be forced to develop policies to win their votes. Furthermore, Francis of the University of Michigan writes in 2002 that where turnout is low and unequal, politicians have a strong incentive to cater to the elite. He concludes that whether democracies respond to rising inequality is conditioned by the political participation of disadvantaged people. Gomez of Florida State University in 2010 corroborates that when voter turnout increases, the landscape of politics becomes more progressive as candidates begin to provide for the disadvantaged. The empirical confirmation comes from a 30-year analysis conducted by Whitco of the University of South Carolina, who found in 2013 that states with lower voting inequality had politicians that catered more to their needs, resulting in policy that lowered income inequality. Democracy can provide equality, but only when equal voting occurs. Take a step in the right direction if anything.
Right. Could we see one card really quickly? The Princeton card that 2 times political power of the elites. The Princeton card 2 times has,
yeah, that's
pre-written.
not it says that the economic elite have more power.
2 times more power.
More power than half of Americans.
Okay. Awesome. Sure. Just that card.
actual study. This is the abstract. Starting from now.
Alright. Or actually, can I look at the starting crop? Or do you need your computer?
Yeah.
Okay. Then, is there anywhere in the study where it says the reason for this folder?
I mean, that's like,
That's just-
yeah, like the whole study is about it. I can like look through it, I guess, and try to find something a little bit better.
Yeah, if you just have the reason. If not, it's like fine, but if you could find the reason for that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
The basic.
Oh, like right now?
Yeah, or do you want to show it me after cross?
Yeah, that would probably be a little bit easier.
Okay, for sure, that's fine.
Everybody ready? Awesome. We negate. Our first contention is that the Electoral College creates more moderate policy. Jason Willick of the American Interest in 2016 writes, the axis of political conflict is shifting from right versus left to nationalism versus cosmopolitanism, with Republicans dominating less populated rural counties and Democrats packed into urban areas. Going forward, the Electoral College might moderate the violence of this clash by forcing the Democratic Party to court blue-collar states instead of doubling down on their advantage in metropolitan areas, which they could do under the popular vote. This competition might in turn force Republicans to think more about how to compete in cities. Because of the Electoral College, therefore, the next Democrat to run against Trump will work to build more appeal outside of metropolitan areas, blunting the trend towards the mutual ghettoization of today's red and blue communities. Judith Best, a political science quarterly in 2004, furthers that a vote distribution requirement like that of the Electoral College is a better test of candidates' abilities to govern, to build and sustain the broad critical mass of support needed to govern, and she concludes that if we abandon the win states requirement, we will undermine or destroy the candidates' incentives to build concurrent majorities rather than majority factions. The impact is better policy for all Americans. The largest segment of Americans now identify as independent by party and moderate by ideology. So if we allow radicalism to fester and grow, we will abandon the actual will of the people. Will Watson of Wesleyan College writes in 2016 that extreme poles of the political process can yell loud enough that they drown out the majority of moderates, getting in the way of actual leading and getting our country back on track. Our second contention is that the Electoral College saves democracy. Subpoint A, plurality. While the Electoral College has not failed to produce a winner by majority since 1824, the results of the popular vote in 4 of the last 7 elections were simple pluralities, or the winner not receiving 50% of the vote. This gets worse with the popular vote, as Alan Guelzo from Gettysburg College explains in 2016 that without the Electoral College, there would be no effective brake on the number of viable presidential candidates. Abolish it in the field of a dozen micro-candidates, the winner may only need 10% of the vote and represent less than 5% of the electorate. And presidents with smaller and smaller pluralities will only aggravate the sense that an elected president is governing without a real electoral mandate. The impact is twofold. First, the system will become undemocratic. A winner by plurality means the vast majority of votes will be tossed out. Second, it allows candidates to pander. Since candidates will know they only have to win a plurality of votes, they can pick certain regions in the country where they want to win and push policies that only those regions support. Subpoint B is autocracy. The Constitution clearly and specifically lays out how a president must be elected by a majority, not a simple plurality, or else the vote goes to the House of Representatives, stating, quote, the person having the greatest number of votes shall be president, if such a number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have such a majority, then the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot. When electors are replaced with the direct popular vote, the majority rule still stands. The resolution is limited, so voting pro only switches the Electoral College to the direct popular vote. It does not change the fact that if a candidate fails to win the majority of votes, the House of Representatives decides the election. Grothman of UC Irvine in 2005 explains the danger of this, stating, were we to switch to direct elections, minor parties might run candidates so as to force the election into the House by creating a situation where no one gets a majority. While this is a huge impact in and of itself, as hundreds of millions of votes may get thrown out, it gets worse because of the way parties would exploit the system. David Daly of the University of Georgia in 2016 explains that Democrats won't control the House until 2030, and maybe not even then, because of gerrymandering and Republican control of state legislatures. In the pro rule, the party in power can essentially fix the election by fielding enough competitive candidates to ensure that nobody wins a majority, sending the election to the House, allowing them to choose the president. For example, the Republicans can run a variety of candidates who are supported by certain regions or ethnic groups to ensure that no one achieves 50% of the vote. They don't even need a candidate with a realistic chance of winning, because without the Electoral College safeguard, every plurality is tossed at the House of Representatives, who can always select a Republican candidate. This is why the Foundation for Economic Education writes in 2016 that the winner of presidential elections would not be from the party with the most appeal, but the party that most successfully games the system to institutionalize themselves as the dominant party. Thus, they conclude that the Electoral College is what prevents one party from systematically controlling the presidency, and because Lee and I want to preserve what is left of our democracy, we are very proud to negate. Good for Charles?
Yeah.
Can I see the Foundation for Economic Education report that you just read?
Did you find anything on that principle?
The problem is that it analyzes 4 different theories as to why that occurs. So it has the breakdown of the 4 theories if you want to read that.
That'd be perfect, yeah.
They're really long. It's not like these Spartans.
Does it like have just like a title for each theory?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I need then. Yeah.
Well, can I just get this to you once when I read that?
Sure.
Because I'm going to keep it normal.
Yeah.
Here you go.
I see that.
You can just read this, we just want to not run crowd. What? If you want to just not run crowd since we're both just reading each other's cards.
I think like one of us has to run crowd.
Yeah, one of you needs to be running track.
Okay.
You just want to have cross and.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Do that.
Okay, do you want to just pass them back?
Yeah, after. Do you need this during cross? I don't.
Yeah, just because I have to do my rebuttal. I have all the cards back,
That's
so.
back then. Yeah, sure. Okay.
It is that very good. The impact of your first contention is creating better policy. So what good is that better policy if it's not representative of all people in the nation?
So we would argue that it becomes more and more representative as
But
they have
how?
to
At
be
the
more
point where
and more.
Latinos have 28% less voting power and blacks have 16% less voting power than the average.
So that's because they live in states that aren't courted by, like. the
Yeah, exactly.
people-
They live in
the-
uncontested states. For instance, like
Exactly.
California is
So,
Texas.
because the Democrats tried to double down on their advantage in urban areas and like big states that were concentrated, and it didn't work, they're now gonna have to shift to these minorities who you say were underrepresented.
Hold
So
on.
they're gonna
No,
become
that's,
more represented.
no, that's not true, because if that's true, then that should already happen. But secondly,
triggered by the
Republicans do the
last
same
election.
thing.
It would be
Republicans
triggered by
do the
this.
same thing. They don't go to states that they know that they already have.
So the issue is like this split between like urbanization and like rural areas is something that's becoming increasingly true. So like that's why it hasn't been done in the past. So this is a shift that's happening now, and it was
I mean,
most
that's
clearly
incredibly
demonstrated by the
vague and
failure
nebulous.
of the Democrat
It's
strategy in the
incredibly
last
vague and
election.
nebulous to say that the rural-urban divide has only just come into
I
play.
mean, that's
I think
what
it's
our
been in
evidence
existence.
We
for
read that
many
evidence, this
decades.
is like the first card we read in case. But can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so if like a candidate doesn't gain like a majority of votes, what happens?
If a
Under
candidate
a
is
popular vote.
under a popular vote.
Okay,
Like, okay, so like, let's say they get like 48% of the vote.
okay.
That's a plurality, right? They would win the election. That's how
Why?
it works under a direct national popular vote.
Why?
Because they got more votes than any other candidate.
But they didn't get a majority. So you're
You don't need a
fiating that the
majority. Hold on,
majority
the
rule
majority rule only
changes.
applies for the electoral college. It says you must get a majority of the electoral college.
So-
nowhere does it say we have to create something different if we were to pass the national popular
So
vote. We have to
how do
create some new amendment.
How do you like fiat that changes to a direct election of pluralities? Or are you guys gonna argue
Okay,
like
well,
that?
you
that,
can't
like,
you
runoff-
can't
like,
reverse
what
fiat
happens
or
if they get
whatever
less
fiat
than
you're
40?
talking about that like automatically would go to the House of Representatives.
Wait, what happens if they get less?
Actually, I
than
want to
40%?
ask. No, you asked 2 questions. Now I'm gonna ask you. a
Okay,
question.
sure.
So when you talk about the idea that it would go to the House of Representatives
Uh-huh.
and Republicans would control the House until at least 2030.
Uh-huh.
If one party was allowed every time to systematically win the presidential election, don't you think like the Supreme Court would step in because that would be a little unconstitutional?
It is constitutional though, like the House of Representatives is what's
Yeah, I
decided.
know, but I'm
It's
saying
laid out
like
in the
if it creates like an unfair advantage for one party, like such a huge advantage that they win the election every time, isn't it like likely that the Supreme Court would take action on it, or someone would bring a suit to the Supreme Court?
I mean, like, that's possible, we can't, like, exactly.
Like, are we just going to assume that there's going to be no consequences
So,
of this
as a
policy?
result of that suit, then what happens? Like, do we switch to runoffs, do we switch to,
I mean,
like?
we don't have to have a runoff, we can just have an election.
Wait, I think it's like
your
kind
idea
of
of
important that you
super-
guys, like, explain what your advocacy is for the tiebreaker in, like, before, like.
Our advocacy is having a national popular vote.
I understand that, but like, when that national popular vote doesn't elect the president by
Look,
majority, something has to happen.
Just because they don't get a majority does not automatically mean it has to go to the House of Representatives.
Okay, so we
Because
would argue
while
that
that may be
plurality
true under the
presidential
electoral
winners
college,
are
it might not
bad.
necessarily be true under the national popular vote. We don't know.
Okay, so what if they get less and less of a plurality? Is there like a line where there would be a runoff election? Like, what if a candidate, the most they garner is 10% of the vote?
And can I see down?
Yeah. what bar was that? Like, what are they talking about?
Democrats want to control.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I mean, like, the title is. The article is talking.
Yeah, can you explain the reason why?
It's true. It's gerrymandering, but. So this part like explains why gerrymandering worked as a strategy for Republicans, and like that's like why our vote was the way it does.
I'm on to Joseph. Let's start off on their first contention about more moderate policy, at the point where they read you from Willick that right now America is the most polarized it's ever been. I don't see why you have a reason to believe that a problem that was created by the Electoral College will somehow subsequently be solved by the Electoral College. The reason why the Electoral College creates extremism in America is simple. Candidates know when they're campaigning they can rely on states to vote along traditional party lines and subsequently pander more aggressively without moderating their tone in swing states. As a result, we are left with more polarized politics, even more so. What Stone Cash of the Washington Post finds in 2015 is that the root cause of polarization in the American political system currently is fundamental disagreements and how much the government should help the disadvantaged. Those debates don't go away in either world, but we make the voices of the ideological weaker in the affirmative world by increasing minority turnout. As Steinsky of Stanford explains in 2014, the most ideological and radical Americans have the highest turnout rates in the status quo. Thus, by increasing minority turnout, we have the ability to dilute the power of their political voices and subsequently decrease the role that polarization plays in modern American politics. Therefore, if you believe you increase minority turnout, you subsequently drive policy to a more moderate place. Let's move on to their second contention about protecting democracy. Their first subpoint is about a plurality. Recognize A, right now you can win the presidency with a plurality, meaning all their impacts are non-unique as they occur under the Electoral College. This is exactly what happened in the last presidential election. Second, recognize that the primary system that we use in our democracy prevents a strong multi-party system from emerging. The best that my opponents can hope for is a two-party dominant system, which we're okay with because that's actually good for politics. As Chong of Stanford explains, right now most Americans don't vote because they don't feel like their vote actually has a meaningful impact. Subsequently, he finds that changing to a multi-party system would solve back for this and increase voter turnout by 12%. The reasoning for this comes from Jones at the University of Delaware in 2012, who finds that multi-party systems inherently increase political competition and drive party platforms to more centrist locations. He finds as a result of that, 25% more voters believe that their vote had a meaningful impact in the election. Their two impacts are first, when we have a plurality, we throw out all the other votes. Recognize all this means is that losing votes don't count. This is what occurs in the status quo. Even more so, he says that pandering happens worse. Recognize this is much more extreme now for the reasons I gave you in response to their first contention. You can cross-apply here. Now on subpoint B about autocracy. There's a couple fundamental issues in this. First, they don't give you any probability that an election goes to a tiebreaker under a national popular vote, so there's no reason to believe why the House of Representatives would have to become involved. Second, recognize the House of Representatives has never once exercised this power historically, so there's no reason to believe they would cling on to it for their dear lives. Three, recognize the closest America has come to passing a national popular vote was in 1979, where a bill was passed through the House of Representatives. That bill stipulated that any candidate that did not receive 40% of the total vote would have to go to a runoff with the second second most popular candidate. At that point, you see the House of Representatives doesn't break the tie, the people break the tie with a runoff. That's the most politically probable and viable option, even more so recognized when Harish brings up in first crossfire, by the Supreme Court stepping in. We would contend that the Supreme Court was an institution created as a check and balance to Congress. So if they believe that the House of Representatives is unfairly using their power to perpetuate a one-party system, they would step in and subsequently check that. Even more so, they tell you that Democrats won't control the House or the Senate until 2030. The warrant for this is gerrymandering. That doesn't go away in their world, but you can link turn this, because we would contend that increasing minority turnout solves back for this, because you decrease the role that gerrymandering plays in modern politics by letting minorities voice their opinions. You can subsequently solve back for this and strengthen the Democratic Party. Then at the end, they talk about from the FEE how right now we can game the electoral college system prevents the system from being gamed. The problem is, I call for the evidence. All it says is that it insulates from high concentration of political power by one party. At the point where all three of our branches of government are dominated by Republicans right now, I see no reason why you believe inherently the electoral college prevents political concentration of one party. Thus, I urge you to affirm in today's round. Thank you.
Yeah, 1 second. Starting graph now. Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna read a two-part overview that probably flows best on the subpoint B of my second contention. Everyone ready?
You are starting on your side.
Starting on my side of the flow, subpoint B of my second contention. Two-part overview. Everyone good?
Starting on theory, they can't kick out of the advocacy they made in first cross. This makes the round completely unfair for the con because they can kick out of plans that they make in later speeches at any time and go for whatever we undercover, which means that even if we answer them, they can't decide not to go for opening the door for time and strategies to functionally mooting the entirety of the neg case by saying that's not how we would do it, or they aren't going to go for those plans. This ruins fairness and education in the round is a reason to sign your ballot for the con on theory. They can't just say that they're going to do a first past the post system in first cross and then advocate for runoffs in first rebuttal. That makes no sense. But then second, even if you end up buying the runoffs are the most likely, then our opponents have just put themselves in a double bind because runoffs would be just as bad as for the House for deciding an election. First, because Judith Beth, the professor of political science at SUNY, explains that under a popular vote with the runoff, coalition building would break down and be postponed to the runoff, which could harden positions, embitter the electorate, and lead to recounts and court challenges over the results of the runoff. Second, fair vote quantifies that 96.5% of federal runoff elections had fewer people voting, and the average reduction in turnout was 35.3%. The SF Chronicle furthers that these voters are also older, whiter, and wealthier than the electorate as a whole, which results in more radical politicians. But then jump into their contentions. The first thing on minorities, a couple of general responses. First, turn this because even if battleground states aren't representative, the specific parts of them that candidates campaign in are. Alternate explains in 2016 that the idea of swing states is a misconception, and those candidates actually spend the most of their time in a few specific counties within those key states, and those counties are a lot more racially diverse. A closer look shows that all groups are getting attention. Second, turn this because voter ID laws were decreased. The Center for American Progress finds that conservative politicians use voter ID laws to suppress minority voices, and the LA Times reports in 2016 that voter ID laws reduced minority turnout by 7%. These restrictions don't happen in the Electoral College because the electoral presidency is decided by swing states who are monopolized by Republicans and thus unable to place these restrictions. When you switch to an MPP, there's an incentive to eke out every last vote and suppress the other side, even in safe states. So red states right now that don't care about ID laws because they know their state is safe no matter what, like Kansas or Montana, would now implement them, stifling minority turnout. But then third, you can turn this because as white individuals comprise the majority of populations, a candidate can simply win by appealing to white concerns. That's what Ahmad from UMass Amherst finds. On the flip side, on the Electoral College campaign, candidates seem to appeal to minorities in specific states in order to swing these votes. Jump to their evidence. First, on Gelman, this study study is flawed. The CTOR in 2016 finds that the data was gathered by multiplying the probability of a state being needed, but the probability of the amount of votes needed to win a state times it being competitive, and it didn't take race into account. But then moved to Princeton, recognized that this card is talking about how elites have more power, but it has nothing to do with turnout in elections. At this point, them switching the electoral system or increasing any sort of turnout has literally nothing to do with them solving for this power disparity that their author articulates, because it is for alternate reasons that this disparity exists. Basically, this non-uniques their entire case because they never solve for the control of the elites that causes all the bad policy impacts that they impact you. But then move on to turnout. First, you're going to first, let's look through their links. The first one being on more visits. First, you're going to look at the fact that like all of the visits are still in the same places, big cities, because that's what they're going to want to go to, which means that like less people are actually representatives. The swing states that they say are so bad actually change all the time, so more people are reached out to. That's where Andrew Gelman of Oxford University finds that they're changing rapidly from election to election, and PBS sometimes that there's more swing states being added. And then second, recognize that you can turn this by their own ads link. Gons from American University in 2012 finds that because a direct election would be, by definition, national resource allocation would be overwhelmingly dominated by paid television advertising, there would be little impetus for grassroots activity like get out the vote efforts. That in turn on net diminishes voter turnout. But then they argue that like ads are going to increase, and that's a really good thing. We're going to tell you that's a really bad thing for a lot of reasons. First, the information that is perpetuated during elections is overwhelmingly negative and false. The current advertising culture is horrible. Forey of the Associated Press finds in January of 2013, quote, the TV ads come in rapid succession at all hours. They cover everything from jobs to education to trust, and they're sharply negative. That's enough to turn off all voters, leaving them frustrated and annoyed. They decrease turnout. Second, turn this because the ads are false. The only voter confidence gain is in wrong information, which is way worse for democracy. That's what Montavali of CBS News finds. Even if they prove turnout increases in among uneducated or wrong voters, in fact, according to Hoser et al., George Mason University in 2009, where there is false campaigning, informed voters are 15% more likely to abstain from elections. Thus, we negate.
Crossword?
Sure.
George Grader? So you tell us that Gelman evidence is bad, so what's your counter?
The Gelman evidence is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't necessarily have to provide counter evidence for that. We just say that's like a flawed study.
Yeah. So you tell us something's wrong, then you have to like provide us with like a supplement.
I mean, I haven't like conducted a study upon
I know,
minority
but,
turnout.
like,
I'm just
yeah.
saying your study upon minority turnout is pretty crappy. Can I ask you a
but
question?
like when you were doing like research for 12 hours before this round, I think it'd be pretty easy to find like a counter to the call, right? If it was like so fundamentally wrong,
I was
wouldn't it be
sleeping
easy?
for most of those 12 hours.
Okay,
just to be
so
clear.
so what are the judges supposed to do? Assume that African Americans have the same voting power as whites in America? Because I think that's really hard to
No, I'm just saying that study drastically overestimates what you're talking about.
So
Can I
then
ask
what
you a
is the
question?
number? What is the number?
I haven't conducted a study on
Okay,
this.
so
if you want to make the argument, it's your burden to give me the evidence for like why that argument's
I have
mine
quantified evidence, and all you've read me is
I
one
told you
piece of
that
evidence that
evidence is
says
bad.
this
You need
number
to-
this
okay.
number's probably
All you
overstated.
read me
So
is one piece of evidence. I tell you that's a bad piece of evidence. You have to have the burden to provide like a better piece of evidence.
No.
To me, I don't have to provide like a better piece of evidence.
If you want to tell the
I'm not
if you want
debating
to
the
tell the
affirmative,
judges,
you're debating the
if you
affirmative.
want to tell the judges not to evaluate our evidence, you have to be able to provide a counter piece of
I'll let the
evidence.
judges like decide this. I'm
Sure,
just contending
yeah.
that that's
I'll
a
let the
bad
judges
issue.
decide.
Can I ask you a question really quick?
Yeah, of course.
What are you advocating for a tiebreaker? Because you completely switched from first cross to its first rebuttal.
Harish is actually really clear that he wasn't going to make an advocacy for us in first crossfire, so like if
But you said that whoever you tell me
Even-
in first
even
cross that
also,
whoever wins, even
our
a plurality
advocacy
in
is
the
what the
election becomes
1979
president,
bill
and
laid
then
out.
you get up there
Our
and you
advocacy
say
is what
the
the
runoffs
1979
are like what's most likely. So
Our
which is
advocacy
most
is
likely?
what the 1979 bill laid out.
Why is that your advocacy?
Because that's the most politically probable and viable solution insofar as it's the closest we've ever come to passing national law.
Maybe it's the closest we've ever come, but how close did that come to actually passing?
It passed the House of Representatives with like a 90% passing rate. and then it died in the Senate
Okay,
with a
we're
filibuster.
definitely going to need to see that it passed the House of Representatives with a 90% pass rate, because I do not think that's true at all.
Okay.
But regardless, like, why can you tell me a totally different thing is more likely in first cross than in first rebuttal?
I mean, I wasn't really listening to what Harish was doing in first crossfire, to be
Well,
honest.
that
I was
seems
writing
kind of
my
problematic
rebuttal.
to me,
But what I
because
did
that's a
hear-
really
what I
abusive
did
strategy
hear was
for
that
us.
Harish specifically said he wasn't going to place an advocacy for us.
Okay,
Because he
Harish,
knew
Harish said specifically, if Jimmy asked if someone gets 48% of the vote, what happens? He says that person would become president.
That's
that is
literally
like
what I-
an
No,
entirely
that's
different
what I-
advocacy than a runoff election.
Wait,
Those are totally different things.
No, the 1979 bill says if a candidate does not secure 40% of the vote, then they go to runoffs. That is literally in line with what Harish said. Seeing as 48% crosses the threshold of 40%, right?
He said that plurality candidates become president.
That's
and then you get up here and tell me a
that's
different
what's
thing
happening
about
right
runoffs.
now. B,
No, it's not, because the Electoral College
did
creates
Donald Trump win a
majorities.
majority?
He
No,
won a majority
he
in
won-
electoral votes.
but he won a
We're under the
popular
Electoral
vote.
College right now, because we're not in a national popular vote right now.
Either way, 48% in what Ardrey said in First Crossfire is still
Can
in
I see
line
the
with what I said
90%
in Models. Don't buy his theory, Shell.
Can I see the 90% of the House?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You guys gonna run crowd first time right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, is everyone ready? I'll be starting. Starting on framework, we give you the analysis that the United States has an obligation to help the most disadvantaged first because of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. My opponents never respond to this analysis. They concede it, meaning that's what we should look to in today's round. So if you want to look at their impacts on like policy representation, you have to do that through the lens of equal representation of all people in the electoral process first. With that, they're losing the round simply on the Gelman analysis. He says it's not really a great analysis, but however, we give you the logical facts behind as to why it's true. Specifically, that is, minorities tend to live in states that are uncompetitive, meaning their electoral vote, their voting power is actually diminished, whereas whites tend to make up swing states more often, and thus their voting power is enhanced. That's why blacks hold 16% less power. That's why Latinos hold 28% less power. It's a very clear place to vote for us. But then on to their case, when they give you this analysis on the idea under their autocracy, they basically say that we're kicking out of our advocacy. Realize I never made an advocacy in First Crossfire. Rather, when he asked me if they get 48% of the vote, what happens? We argue they win, and that's what the 1979 bill also says, because it says if you don't get above 40%, then you have to go to a runoff. So specifically, our advocacies are not mutually exclusive here. But then moreover, they ignore this term that Sam puts. Basically, when more minorities vote, that leads to less of an effect of gerrymandering. And lastly, realize the analysis I brought up in First Crossfire, which is the idea that if this system led to one-party domination at all times, then it's very, very likely that the Supreme Court or someone would take action on that because it's highly unconstitutional. But then back over onto our case, they give you the analysis that voter IDs are going to go up. But what only if Texas finds in 2008 is that when you pass a direct national popular vote, that creates a national narrative on elections, and it gives the idea that the federal government has to control what happens in elections, meaning there's a greater incentive for them to eliminate voter ID laws, make them respond to that before they gave any access on this argument. Then they say visits are still in the same places. However, that's not true. From Stromberg tells you the equal distribution of visits goes up 56%. That means people who were marginalized before are now coming out and now getting at least some exposure. Then we tell you that turnout increases 2 million votes. He talks about the idea of grassroots campaigning and negative and false ads decreasing. But at the point where people still get more exposure versus no exposure at all, we're still winning there. At the end of the day, the impact is better policy for the people.
So here's where like an actual thing with bipartisan support, like one. That's what it has to be.
Okay. Yeah. We're gonna start for. Wait, how much do we have left?
You have 40 minutes.
All right, then we'll start running now. Yep.
Just their case, our case. Everybody ready?
Hold on.
So we'll buy their framework and explain why we're winning under it. The first thing they do is extend the fact that swing states are white or over-ranked, but remember we tell you that the parts campaigned in them are actually more diverse, which is the more important thing, so they're the parts that actually matter, and so they're still campaigning to minorities. But then they say that there's an increased incentive to do voter ID laws under a popular vote, under the Electoral College. But remember, a popular vote is going to be, like, there's way more incentive because, like, the only places you're going to be able to implement voter ID laws are, like, Republican-dominated safe states where they're actually, under the popular vote, going to have an actual incentive to squeeze out every single vote of that state. And then also, remember the fact that they say that, like, they're going to increase the distribution of visits, but remember Gelman tells you that swing states are actually, like, changing and increasing all the time, so we actually access a better, like, distribution of visits in our, like, on our side. Then also remember that they never respond to the fact that Gons tells you that an increased ads actually trade off of grassroots campaigning, which leads to a net reduction in turnouts. And then they say that, like, more exposure through advertising is inherently good. They don't respond to our two terms that, like, these ads are mostly negative and false, which the Associated Press says that, like, sharply negative ads decrease turnout. Then more specifically, GMU tells you that false campaigning actually decreases informed turnout by 15%, which is going to be really important because you're getting less voters and less informed voters. But then when on our case, remember, like, also the fact that, like, on our subpoint B, just them not having advocacy is also a pretty bad thing. Then also I did ask them across what happens if they get less than 40% of the vote and they still refuse to, like have an advocacy, and then they kick out of this advocacy in the first in their first rebuttal and say that runoffs are going to happen. But then even if this is true and even if you buy that runoffs are going to happen, remember that we turn runoffs and they don't respond to any of these turns, which actually links into their case and framework better because first, like, popular vote runoffs kill coalition building and increase recounts, which is a better way to link into better policy, because if you're always having, like, little coalition building and, like, recounts all the time, there's no way that they're going to access, like, this better policy. Then also remember that in the election that actually matters, which is the runoff election, like, Fair Vote tells you that, like, 96.5% of these elections have decreased turnout, and the average decrease in turnout is 35%. And not only that, but the people who do turn out are older, whiter, and richer, which both like better links into both turnout and their minority impacts, because the election is decided by fewer, whiter, richer people. So we're clearly winning their entire case and their framework, and that's why you can vote for the negative.
So if a candidate, you took your first response to our case is that the counties where candidates go and visit are racially diverse. So if I'm a minority and I'm visited by a candidate, does my voting power suddenly become equal?
So it's like we live in Florida, so like the part of Florida that actually swings Florida is like the I-4 corridor, which is significantly more diverse than Florida as a whole.
Okay,
so
but does my voting power become equal?
There's like bases exist in both states, but they don't exist to a big
What if I don't
like when your impact is like policy, we would say if they're like catering their policy to these swing districts, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, like you're still not more diverse.
The fundamental question that inherently the Electoral College is creating skews in representation just by existing, because it has the unit rule.
Yeah, right. Like
where, like, you get the entirety of electoral.
That's the point of, like,
that would be true if you prove that those, like, districts that decide this winner take all are, like, really white guys. But Jimmy and I can both tell you we, like, work for campaigns in the I-4 corridor. There's a lot of
that's fine. That's not relevant.
Thank you, but the problem is that it doesn't change anything, right? Like, minorities are still heavily concentrated in states with predetermined electoral college outcomes, which is why they have less voting power. Even if you think our number is not perfect, it's the only number in today's
round. But as long as we prove districts that actually matter to, like, cater to are racially diverse, you guys don't have an impact. But then also the card that
does that result in
at that entire point is the Gelman card, which you never responded to our indictment.
No, I think
does that result in better policy?
Does that
when you
say yes to,
like, more minorities and, like,
so then why do states with lower turnout rates have, like, higher levels of, like, health disparities and things like that?
I don't think you guys are proving that.
We did in case we read, like, the Wicco analysis and the Francis analysis.
What does that have to do with your impact of minorities?
I mean, I think we
because when they turn out less, so their policies are less likely to be represented in government.
Okay, well, they turn out a lot less under, like, runoff elections and all the other.
Yeah, but here's the comparative. Here's the really important comparative to the judges is that right now minorities aren't voting. Under our rule, they're at least voting in the initial election.
Or at
Sure,
least they
there's a
have
chance
people
that-
voting.
I think this is the problem with your guys' entire case. This round is not a referendum upon the Electoral College. It's would the national popular vote be better than the Electoral College? Even if they 100% prove that the Electoral College sucks, if we prove that the national popular vote sucks a lot worse and makes turnout a lot worse, makes minority problems a lot worse, then we're still winning this round by far.
Not only have you not won those arguments on the flow, you haven't even gone for anything with turnout or policy. All you're impacting to is just really
Everything we go on is
turnout and
like
policy.
pretty much everything.
Your theory shell about moving advocacy.
Yeah, that was the one thing.
Policy
Stop
is actually-
turnout and policy.
So what did the judges get policy-wise when they negated?
We say that we increase turnout through runoffs. We say that we don't have these radical politicians because there's not the decrease in coalition building, and there's not the increase in like white rich voters
It's
going out.
100% of people are voting in the first election, and then of those, like 50% of them are voting in the runoff, right?
Well, no, because we also have a lot of places that
minorities
decrease
are
turnout in
voting
the first
election right
election,
now,
like
so
decreasing
even
get
if
out
they
the
vote
vote
in the
efforts,
runoff less
and
than
all the
whites,
ad
that's
stuff
still
that you
voicing
pull
their
drop in
politics.
summary.
So we have a minute left. At the point where my opponents conceded our framework in their rebuttal, they lose this round insofar as they never show you what negating does to help the disadvantage. At the point where literally the first card they read you in their case is about how terrible the current American political system is. And the first card we read you in our case from Gelman, the Latinos have 28% of the voting power as whites, and blacks have 16% of the voting power as whites. I see no reason why you can't affirm, just at the risk of benefiting the disadvantage, even more so. Even if you don't believe the Gelman number is perfect, to the point where my opponents have not provided you an alternative, you have to default to our evidence. At that point, look to Stromberg, who finds that right now we have a lot of resources concentrated in a couple of markets, but when you affirm and you move to an MPV, that increases the equal distribution of resources by market by 56%. This is engaging voters and mobilizing who were previously neglected. Even more so, they say to get out to vote, and grassroots campaigning goes down. Remember what Harish tells you in summary from Enos, that get out to vote campaigns actually increase the electoral divide between the rich and the poor, because the poor do not have the ability to go out on voting day. They can't take days off, and they also feel like politicians don't care about them. So we would contend that losing grassroots is a good thing for equality. But at the point where we're spreading resources more evenly, Hartman finds that we will increase voter turnout by 2 million. This has two impacts. The first comes from Whitco, which they never contest, that says when you decrease voter turnout inequality, you also decrease income inequality because more policies are passed in a progressive direction. The second impact is off of their case, which they never respond to, which I tell you, when you increase minority turnout, you challenge the strength of gerrymandering, and subsequently you prevent Republicans from controlling the House and the Senate until 2030. At that point, if you believe a one-party dominant system is bad, look to the fact that right now Republicans control all three branches of government. The reasoning for that is because they game the system. The only way to challenge that game system is to increase the voice of minorities. The second independent reason you can affirm is the only analysis which they drop in their summary, which says that right now 32 states have voter ID laws. The only way we can change that is by changing the narrative from elections being state by state to a federal election, which gives the federal government the constitutional justification to ban voter ID laws once and for all. Comparatively, you increase minority turnout in national and local elections by decreasing voter ID laws. Thus, I urge you to affirm.
Okay. Let's take 4 minutes to do a summary. Everyone ready?
start at the top of their case. First, remember the term that we give you about how we give you where they respond saying that like swing states are lighter, but they lack nuance here because what we tell you is the swing counties that actually decide these are really, really diverse. That means we link best into policy because they're catering to that diverse policy. But then on voter ID laws, they try and do this like new response to ours and like final focus about like national voter ID law. But remember that we tell you this is on a voter ID laws are a state-by-state basis. That's what the Supreme Court's decided, and they have much more of an incentive to suppress this in safe states under the popular vote than they would under the Electoral College. But then remember that they never respond to our two index. First on Gelman, we tell you it's flawed because it doesn't take race into account. That takes out the whole thesis of their case. And then on Princeton, we tell you that the elites have more power in both worlds. This takes out their entire case because they have no impact because they don't change anything exterior to elections, so they don't change the actual policy impacts that the elites have control over. But then moving on to like their visits, remember our study saying that swing states are increasing and changing. So that means that there's actually you visit more diverse places under the Electoral College. But then also extend the Gons analysis, which says that when ads increase, that decreases grassroots campaigning and decreases turnout. They concede that ads increase. That means that there's an overall net decrease in their turnout. That's where we best link in.